With this, we move on to the next session where Dr. Sanjay Kumar Shah is going to speak on diabetic kidney disease, strike before it's too late. We all know prevention is better than cure. I welcome the speaker, Dr. Sanjay Shah, who is a senior endocrinologist and diabetologist. He is attached as a consultant to Narayana Super Speciality Hospital and head of diabetes care at Narayana Multi-Speciality Hospital. He is also the founder member and president of Howrah Town Diabetes Study Society. He has been awarded the best resident doctor at Boston, UK, and also Mumbai. He is involved in teaching and training many paramedics, nurses, and doctors. I welcome you, sir, on stage. To chair this particular session, I would like to invite Dr. Bismay Kumar, consultant nephrologist and founder member and member of scientific affairs of Howrah Town Diabetes Study Society. Along with him, I would like to invite Dr. Nirmalo Chakraborty. He is a very senior consultant physician with interest in cardiology and diabetology with vast years of experience. I would also like to invite Dr. Shukanti Bhattacharya, who is professor and head of medical physiology at Eye Care Institute of Medical Science and Research. He is also a consultant physician and a biomedical researcher, and he has many publications and authored several books. I welcome speaker, sir, and chairpersons on stage.
Good morning, friends. We are going to have a very interesting subject and discussion now, which is diabetic kidney disease, how we should tackle the problem at the early stage, as we always tell our patients to catch them young and hit them hard. And with the rise of exponentially the diabetes, we are seeing a huge rise of diabetic kidney disease. If you, for example, go to any renal unit today, all the dialysis beds, 90% of them are being taken up by DKD patients. So this is a very important subject, and none other than Sanjay can do the important things that we are
Thank you. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you to all my previous speakers who have done a wonderful job. And I'm largely going to focus on a particular molecule called Finrenone. Thank you to Bayer for sponsoring this session. So this is going to be about diabetic kidney disease, strike before it's too late. We've heard how our dialysis units are full of diabetes patients, perhaps upwards of 75%, nearly 90% was mentioned. And that is actually true. Okay, that's actually true. And it's a heart-wrenching statistics, I must say, with respect to diabetic kidney disease. But what is perhaps the best way of perhaps learning and sharing together is discussing a case. While this is a fictitious case, but this is something which is very common in everybody's clinical practice. So meet Raj, who's 57 years old with type 2 diabetes. Aside from his usual ailments, like aches and pains maybe at times, most patients attending specialist clinics, like myself, feel reasonably okay. They feel good, and they just want to just check in to say, Dr. Saab, मैं ठीक हूँ, दवाई क्या यही चलेगा? His A1C and BP are relatively well controlled, I must say, not terrible. An A1C of 7.4% with the standard of care for glycemic control. He's 57 years old, 10 years of diabetes. His ECG is normal, his blood pressure is reasonably well controlled. And if you put the creatinine value on the app, the CKD-EPI, it comes up with 62 mils per minute. So only very mild sort of kidney disease is what the EGFR is trying to tell you. His current medication is telmisartan, chlorthalidone, as Dr. Bera wanted to convince us. That's what perhaps we should be using. He was on this one. And he's also on metformin, glimepiride, and on dapagliflozin, which perhaps also protects the kidney, as we all know. So the choices that you make today can impact Raj's future. Do you think we need to do anything more than this for this patient? In the world of, if a patient comes to me maybe 6 months later to my clinic, just saying that, Dr. Saab, ye sab reports saath mein laya hoon, मैं तो ठीक हूँ, that's it. Do we stop here or should we do anything more? How many people will say you would like to do something more? Okay, 2, 3. Okay, 3, 4. All right, 5. Very good. So, doing more. And you may say that, why are you digging so much when somebody is well, he's asymptomatic, okay, and his blood pressure is okay, his sugar is okay. What do you want to know more? We want to know more because I think we need to realize that the definition of chronic kidney disease has changed, okay? CKD is underdiagnosed in terms of patients with diabetes due to the underutilization of the recommended CKD screening. It's not about EGFR anymore, and that's what I mentioned in my introductory speech as well. If I was stuck with that, what I had learnt in medical school, GFR and creatinine, perhaps that the door would close. I had to continue to learn. Continuing medical education is extremely important. And what we now know today, if you look at the ADD-CKD study, the diagnosed CKD, only 12%, 88% having CKD, not diagnosed. Why? Because we are not doing urine albumin creatinine ratio. You need to look at albuminuria. So 85% of patients, okay, we need to have EGFR done perhaps, all right? How does this work? But only 47% patients had urinary albumin creatinine ratio. So urinary ACR is an extremely important part of the investigations of the patient when he comes to see you in clinic, okay? That's very important. The guidelines say, recommends both EGFR and UACR testing at least annually in all patients with type 2 diabetes, should be done in patients with diabetes. And the recommendation is that both EGFR and urinary albumin creatinine ratio properly identifies, not only does it identify, it also stages how severe somebody's illness is, okay? That's important. And also it helps you to monitor somebody with CKD. So it's very, very important, fairly innocuous. And you can imagine, if somebody has albuminuria, what symptoms will he have? None. If you have a blood sugar of 200, what symptoms will you have? None. If you have a blood pressure of 160 systolic, what symptoms will you have? None. That's perhaps is the biggest tragedy of diabetes. Okay? Diabetes is largely a silent disease, and diabetes complications also in the earlier stages is also basically silent. So supporting routine EGFR and albuminuria screening to assess early cardiovascular disease risk in patients with CKD associated with diabetes is what we all must do. And why is that? And this is why we need to do that. If you look on your urinary albumin creatinine ratio is more than 300. Okay, there's a steep upward climb in terms of cardiovascular events. So albuminuria is an early predictor of heart and kidney disease. And on your right, it is again the same thing, macroalbuminuria, a huge perhaps increase in the risk of kidney composite outcomes, be it the first doubling of serum creatinine, end-stage kidney disease or death. So you have on your left cardiovascular events, okay? On your left. Hello? Oh, yeah, okay. So on your left, cardiovascular events, be it MI, hospitalization for heart failure, or unstable angina or cardiovascular death. And on your right, largely kidney disease. A pointer ta kibhabe kaj kore re? Okay, so there you are. So that's very important. And it is recommended that patients with diabetes routinely screen for kidney disease by assessing EGFR defined by CKD, EPI, and urinary albumin creatinine ratio. So this is Raj. If you only looked at his creatinine and measured his EGFR, he seemed to be at low risk, okay? Low risk. But if you actually did his urinary albumin-creatinine ratio, and that is what his albumin-creatinine ratio was, he's asymptomatic, okay? It's quite high, and he is at high risk for both cardiovascular events and renal events. So you can appreciate how important it is to measure patients' urinary albumin-creatinine ratio. So based on his EGFR and urinary albumin-creatinine guidelines, recommend that he should be screened more often. So somebody with significant proteinuria, obviously we need to do it more often than once a year. Essentially, largely to monitor as to what treatment that we are giving him is working for your patient or not, as well as looking at the fact that is the patient compliant to the treatment as well. So you get some insight into it. So if you have albuminuria, you're at a higher risk of kidney disease and also a coronary artery disease equivalent. Your risk of having another or having a cardiovascular event is as high as people who seem to already have had a cardiovascular event in the past. So the CKD and CVD progression in type 2 diabetes is driven by many factors, combined factors of metabolic in terms of sugars and dyslipidemia, hemodynamic in terms of blood pressure, and then there are inflammatory and fibrotic pathways, okay? So these factors need to be addressed. Traditionally, we've been actually addressing the hemodynamic and metabolic factors through ACE inhibitors, ARBs, diuretics, CCP, calcium channel blockers. SGLT2 inhibitors do have some effect also on anti-fibrotic aspects as well, but largely basically controlling blood sugars as perhaps controlling blood pressure as well. So these are the basically targets that we were able to do in the past. Lately, we are now managing to perhaps reduce inflammation and fibrosis significantly. And because that aspect of mineralocorticoid receptor overactivation, which happens in diabetes, needs to be addressed, okay? The overactivation is because of the elevated ligand levels in terms of aldosterone or cortisol, and or even when you have proteinuria, you have an increased mineralocorticoid receptor activity in the kidney. So that needs to be addressed, this overactivation, to stop or block inflammation and fibrosis. So I've already explained to you the mechanism of mineralocorticoid receptor activation, and perhaps this is very important. This is what we are doing in clinical practice. There is increased MR expression with albuminuria, and we can perhaps follow up our patients by giving them medicines and actually quantifying their albuminuria if these drugs are actually working or not. So MR overactivation, associated mechanisms are unaddressed by the traditional medicines that we use in diabetes and diabetic kidney disease and blood pressure, like RAS, and even perhaps SGLT2 has some effect of reducing sort of inflammation and fibrosis. But we have a whole new group of drugs, particularly Finrenone as a non-steroidal mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, which actually specifically goes and blocks the overactivation of mineralocorticoid receptors. So it slows the heart and kidney disease progression in patients with type 2 diabetes by affecting inflammation and fibrosis, and also has some hemodynamic benefits as well, because it's after all a mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist. Now, we have several other mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists in clinical practice. So we are perhaps well aware of using spironolactone in kidney disease, but we also do it in heart disease. So it is again somewhere it is indicated to be used in congestive heart failure as well as in resistant hypertension. Eplerenone, another of those basically steroidal mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists used in heart failure and resistant hypertension. However, Finrenone is a non-steroidal bulky molecule with a half-life of approximately 2 to 3 hours. And the data now we have is that it is now indicated for use in patients with CKD, chronic kidney disease, associated with type 2 diabetes. So for Finrenone, actually the label is for a different indication in terms of CKD and type 2 diabetes. Finrenone is highly selective, shows essentially the endocrine side effects are not there with the use of Finrenone, and because of its short half-life, compared to both spironolactone and eplerenone, it produces less hyperkalemia as well. So you have the benefit of being able to use this drug in patients with more than mild or moderate kidney disease. Now, if we look at the journey of Finrenone, first they looked at some of the data from the phase 2 program, which was about 2,347 patients. The ARTS study, patients with HFrEF and CKD, they looked at using versus spironolactone. With Finrenone, they had less hyperkalemia. So there was already evidence to suggest that it was a good molecule, but less hyperkalemia. With ARTS-DN study, they showed that it managed to protect the kidney by reducing albuminuria. And for the ARTS-HF study, they again showed in patients with HFrEF and CKD with or without diabetes, again comparable safety compared to eplerenone. As a consequence of this data from phase 2 studies, the Bayer then embarked upon the phase 3 studies. And these two most important studies, the Figaro DKD and the Fidelio DKD. Okay, and in totality, roughly 13,000 patients were studied. The Fidelio study was largely looking at kidney outcomes, kidney failure and disease progression. Obviously, they also looked at cardiovascular outcomes as well in that group of patients. And the Figaro study, which is in the bottom right-hand side, was essentially looking at cardiovascular mortality and morbidity. So largely cardiovascular outcomes. And so you can appreciate that if you wanted to look at cardiovascular outcomes, a milder kidney disease patients were used. And then if you wanted to look at renal outcomes, a much more than mild, moderate severity of kidney disease was used. So this is for DKD. This is for DKD study that they did. Okay, Fidelio DKD. That is the group of patients with perhaps grade 4 nephropathy and grade 2 with macroalbuminuria, a significant number is what they did. And for the Figaro study, which is in green there, even milder versions of renal impairment patients were used to basically check on cardiovascular outcomes, which is extremely important. So if you ask your junior doctor, what do patients with CKD die of? The answer is not renal failure. The answer actually is cardiovascular events, okay? So what do patients with chronic liver disease die of? Again, usually the answer is not liver disease. Actually, it is cardiovascular events. So this is the true story of the metabolic disease that we are basically looking into. Now, when you combine the two trials, Figaro and Fidelio, you then can basically have a pre-specified pooled analysis, essentially fidelity. So very quickly, the pooled analysis, if you look at it, A1Cs were moderately well controlled, 7.7%. Systolic blood pressures, again, reasonable, 135 across the whole, and the age of the patients, 64, 65 years. And the duration of diabetes, again, reasonably advanced, so 15 to 16 years. So that is the kind of patients that were looked at. As I already mentioned to you, the Figaro study, less albuminuria compared to the Fidelio study. Okay, so because they were looking at cardiovascular outcomes, serum potassium were reasonably equal in both groups of patients. History of cardiovascular disease was similar in both groups. Heart failure was actually excluded in the trial, so patients were very mild heart failure, if they were at all included. Only 7% patients were included in the studies. What about ACE inhibitors and ARBs? Nearly 100% of patients were on either an ACE inhibitor or ARB, as you can see. And for glucose lowering therapies, again, because they were all diabetic patients, nearly 98% or 99% patients were on basically medication for diabetes treatment. With respect to SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 receptor agonists, when the trials were done, we did not know so much about SGLT2 inhibitors, but there you are, a reasonable number of patients who are also on SGLT2 or GLP-1 receptor agonists. Sorry. So, what did they look at? They wanted to look at the cardiovascular composite, time to CV death, non-fatal MI and non-fatal stroke, and in terms of hard kidney outcomes, time to kidney failure, that is dialysis, or eGFR of less than 15, a sustained more than 57% of eGFR, which is doubling of serum creatinine, or renal death. Obviously, as I mentioned to you, perhaps only mild heart failure was included. NYHA 2 to 4 were excluded from these studies, and they all had patients with diabetes and CKD, and they were all optimized on RAS inhibition. And this is what the trial actually showed. The Fidelity study showed 14% relative risk reduction versus placebo for cardiovascular composite, CV death on your right, 12%, non-fatal MI by 9%, and hospitalization for heart failure by 22%. On the bottom panel, kidney outcomes, kidney failure by 16%, end-stage kidney disease by 20%, and again, you can see doubling of serum creatinine by 30%, and kidney-related death were not perhaps included. If you then combine the studies, here you are, 22% reduced risk of first hospitalization for heart failure, statistically very significant. Similarly, reduction of CV death and first hospitalization for heart failure, 17% again, p is less than 0.02, and the 32% reduction in new onset heart failure versus placebo, p less than 0.005. So finerenone as a class 1 agent in patients with CKD and type 2 diabetes recommended to reduce the risk of hospitalization for heart failure. And on your right, level A recommendation in individuals with type 2 diabetes and diabetic kidney disease, finerenone is recommended to reduce the risk of hospitalization for heart failure. So that was for cardiovascular events. With respect to renal events, the ADA and the FDA have recommended that you need a 30% reduction in urinary albumin creatinine ratio to slow CKD progression. So what does finerenone do? Finerenone can manage to do that, a 32% reduction between baseline and month 4 versus placebo in terms of reduction in proteinuria. And as a consequence, if you look at data in terms of now we know that SGLT2 inhibitors are also very good in terms of protecting the kidney. Your patient were on SGLT2 or not on SGLT2, actually there's no difference. So they all were to the left of the hazard ratio 1, okay?
Dr. Sanjay Shah, sir, can we reach end stage?
Absolutely, all right. So here you are, clinical data of combination of SGLT2 inhibitors and non-steroidal MRAs essentially gives you many more years of life and many more years of less morbidity. Upwards of 5 years or 4 years is what the data suggests. If you look at an article from Circulation, the drugs which have perhaps helped in terms of MACE, in terms of SGLT2, GLP-1, as well as non-steroidal MRA, you can see the benefit. The ones is to the left of the extreme left is essentially the combination of SGLT2, GLP-1, and non-steroidal MRA finerenone. Similarly for hospitalization for heart failure, similarly for cardiovascular death, similarly for CKD progression and all-cause mortality. So essentially, finerenone has been shown to have benefits in terms of cardiovascular protection. In terms of side effects, the side effects are very few really, as good as perhaps placebo, apart from hyperkalemia, being a non-steroidal mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist. But this hyperkalemia resulted in only 1.7% of patients discontinuing treatment with finerenone. So the hyperkalemia is mild, but it's definitely there, and we need to learn how to basically treat our patients. So there are guidelines with what we should be doing to avoid hyperkalemia in patients. On your bottom right corner, that box which says fruits to avoid, particularly I must highlight the use of coconut water. Okay, because a lot of our patients in clinical practice, our culturally feel that drinking Dab water is good for your kidneys. So obviously you need to highlight that to your patient and avoid it. Most of my patients with CKD would visit the dietitian so that they consume less potassium as part of your diet. Now, the Fidelity reported a lower rate of discontinuation due to hyperkalemia compared to other studies. We have had aliskiren, direct renin blocker, produces more hyperkalemia. We've had ACE inhibitor, ARB studies, again more hyperkalemia. Again, the AMBER study showing basically the use of ACE inhibitor and ARB, again more hyperkalemia. Obviously, you can reduce hyperkalemia by using a potassium binding drug. Okay, but Finrenone here, the significance is only 1.7% in blue. Basically, hyperkalemia is significantly less. So this is perhaps my last slide, I think. Diabetes patients with CKD have a high risk of heart and kidney disease outcomes. You must screen them regularly for urinary albumin creatinine ratio at least once a year. Finrenone targets MR overactivation and slows heart and kidney disease progression in patients with type 2 diabetes. Finrenone shows cardiovascular and kidney benefits across a broad patient population, including those with heart failure, ASCVD, and Finrenone has demonstrated good safety outcomes and ease of use profile. Remember, just check your patient's potassium at the end of 1 month of introducing Finrenone, then 4 monthly, so that obviously your patient is at hand with respect to side effects. The recommendation for Finrenone is the same as is the US FDA in patients with diabetes and CKD, and essentially many guidelines, be it the European Society for Cardiology, hypertension, the kidney KDIGO guidelines, the ADA guidelines, all perhaps consider now the use of non-steroidal MRA as part of one of the pillars of managing patients with diabetes and kidney disease. And here you are, again, a whole host of guidelines from major associations accepting the use of Finrenone as part of the treatment. Can you use basically Finrenone with patients with poor blood glucose control, long duration of diabetes, patients on insulin, patients on SGLT2 inhibitors, or ASCVD? And the answer is loud and clear, yes, you can. We now are very well aware of the fact that ROS blockers, SGLT2 inhibitors, and perhaps now GLP-1 receptor agonists. The FLOW study has shown some benefit, and the SOUL study will give us some idea as well. But Finrenone, again, because the mechanism of action is slightly definitely different, attacking inflammation and fibrosis, also has become an important pillar in the treatment of type 2 diabetes and CKD. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Sanjay. You have been as erudite as ever. I think it's a very important subject. We should be having some discussion. And may I ask the persons present here to have their questions or comments?
Yes, please. Ashok Da.
At what interval serum potassium measured? And what should be the cutoff value of serum potassium to stop Finrenone?
Yeah, so if you look at the recommendation, you initiate it if the potassium is less than 4.8, or 4.8 or less than 4.8 is the recommendation. And you, after introducing it within the first month, you should check their potassium again to say that the patient has not become hyperkalemic or not. Obviously, with a potassium of more than 5.5, definitely needs to be discontinued. In my clinical practice, if it crosses more than 5, I send my patient once more to the dietitian, making sure that they perhaps are avoiding foods or actually treat their foods when they cook so that the potassium level in their diet actually drops. Now, if you feel very strongly that this patient is benefiting from the non-steroidal mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist because you found that he later had a significant reduction in albuminuria, more than 50% or something, and you want to continue with it, then it is mentioned that you perhaps can use potassium binding agents to some of these patients who are very, very sort of difficult to manage their potassium and continue the drug. So you can do that as well. The idea is the first 1 month, look at it, and then you can check it every 4 months. So that's how it is supposed to be done.
Okay, I personally consume Finrinone, that's why I asked this question.
So every 4 months if you've done more than 4 months.
Thank you so much, thank you.
My first question is that should we combine all these three molecules, ARB, SGLT2 and Finrinone in diabetic kidney disease to have better kidney protection? And second question that in Finrinone group there was hyperkalemia was 1.7% or 2%. So what was the background of EGFR in those patients? Were they having EGFR less than 60 or less than 30?
Yes, they were.
So what was background of EGFR in these patients who had hyperkalemia?
Yeah, so to answer your first question first, because each of these molecules separately protect the kidney differently, the addition, and then the data also seems to suggest that the GLP-1 analog, the SGLT2 inhibitor, and Finrinone perhaps would give your patients diabetic kidneys the best chance of protection. Okay, so that is one. If you can manage to add on the drug, obviously cost issues are there, as well as side effects issues are there. You would get the additional benefit by adding all three drugs. So that is one. Obviously, in patients with significant CKD is where we always worry about hyperkalemia. That is medical school teaching. So we always worry about hyperkalemia in those groups of patients. So we need to basically check them as regularly as I mentioned to you earlier. With respect to the kind of EGFR these patients were, all these patients, as I showed you, they were in stage 3, most of them. The Fidelio study, which is essentially a kidney outcome study, all of them had basically, they were all in stage 3, A, B, and stage 4. Okay, so they had significant reduction in EGFR of less than 60. And the average, I think, was 45 or even less than 45. I think it was 42 or something of that sort. And these patients were given Finrinone. So these are a more than modest reduction in EGFR who were put on mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists. And out of the 100 patients, only 2 you needed to stop. So 98 actually benefited. And the benefit was in terms of doubling of serum creatinine, end-stage kidney disease, and cardiovascular death. So I think there's no doubt about the fact that being able to use this drug would benefit our patients, improve morbidity and basically improve mortality as well. But we also need to be aware of the fact that there is a small chance of potassium being high. The benefits are so good that the recommendations now say that in the odd patient, if you think that the patient is benefiting significantly, use a potassium binding agent, but continue the drug in terms of clinical outcomes.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dr.
for
Shah.
your edifying speech. I've got small questions, practical questions. So many of the diabetic patients where the parameters are quite good, like the albumin creatinine ratio of urine, and so is this glomerular filtration rate. These are all quite normal. But he heralds some sort of diabetic retinopathy. Can we take it as a surrogate marker of diabetic renal disease? As you say, the CKD is often underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Can we start all those repertoire of Finrinone, SGLT2 inhibitor early in those cases?
Okay. See, how should I put it? I'll put it through what I have been through in training. When I was growing up as a diabetologist, endocrinologist, it was almost considered, as you rightly said, that you will have retinopathy if you have nephropathy. Okay? But in 25 years of my practice and science has moved forward, now you can have CKD without even proteinuria in patients with diabetes. Okay? So the link is there, but it doesn't have to be there. Okay? Okay, that is one. So appreciating CKD through eGFR and urine albumin creatinine ratio is exactly how we should go about doing it. So that is one. And two is, obviously retinopathy is a different ball game. So many of the medicines that we are using in clinical practice have managed to show microvascular benefits at the level of the retina if your blood sugars are reasonably well controlled. But some data suggests if you do it too quickly, there's some worsening of retinopathy, okay? So I think the story still is not well understood in terms of retinopathy. So we'll watch this space to see if there are newer drugs available which can address this issue about retinopathy.
I think
But
we'll
do it
end up
separately.
the session because it's already running a lot of
Sure.
late in
Kaushik,
time.
we can perhaps talk about it later.
Just to highlight only 2 points, Figaro and Fidelio trial included Finerenone only after maximum tolerated ARB. So always remember this thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, chairpersons.
Thank you so much, Speaker Sir, for your insightful presentation. I would like to request our chairpersons to felicitate our speaker today. I would like to invite Dr. B.P. Pandey to felicitate our chairpersons, Dr. Nirmallo Chakraborty and Dr. Shukanti Bhattacharya. Thank you, chairpersons. Thank you, Speaker Sir. Thank you, Dr. Pandey.